1984, Wes Craven introduced the world to Freddy Krueger, and horror was never the same again. Freddy became an instant icon. Just 1 year later, New Line pushed a sequel to theaters, Freddy's Revenge. But how does this oddball entry hold up 40 years later? What's up everyone, I'm Trap, and I love talking about movies. Today, we're taking a look at A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. It was released in 1985, directed by Jack Sholder, and written by David Chaskin. Unfortunately, there's no Wes Craven to be found here this time around. It had a modest budget of $3 million and ended up making over $30 million at box office. But the real story here is how different this sequel feels compared to everything else we get in this franchise. That's exactly what we're getting into here today. We'll go over some pros and cons as well as my own personal rating, all spoiler free here, but if you've seen the film, stick around to the very end. I'm going to get into a spoiler chat where we can really have some fun. So the plot takes place 5 years after the original, and we follow Jesse Walsh, a teenager who moves into Nancy Thompson's old house. Jesse immediately starts having nightmares of Freddy Krueger, but instead of Freddy just haunting his dreams, the film flips the script. Freddy wants to possess Jesse and use him as a vessel to kill people in the real world. But let's get right into it. The good stuff. Mark Patton as our lead gives a raw, vulnerable performance. From the moment this movie begins, you feel his struggles and his pain, and I gotta say, this guy's not afraid to let out a scream. We get an absolutely menacing performance from Robert Englund as Freddy here. This is by far the darkest Freddy we get, and he does not hold back here. This film took some pretty big swings. I'll get into more detail about how I felt about them later in my spoiler chat, but I gotta respect the people for trying out different things. And I must say, the practical effect work here is gnarly and effective. This movie holds probably my favorite effect out of all these films, and even though some things may appear slightly dated, I still love them. And now, the bad stuff. Even though this film, I believe, has the highest kill count out of all the movies in this franchise, I'm not 100% there. The kills aren't memorable here. The majority near the end are almost comical, and one of the biggest ones we get is done off-screen. The movie's tone takes a pretty hard shift from creepy surrealism and the internal struggles of our lead to campy party slasher. Beyond Jesse and Lisa, a lot of the characters feel underwritten here. There's no real character growth outside of them, so we never really get a chance to connect with or feel for anyone else in this film. There's some editing and direction choices made primarily near the end of this film that can either make you laugh at the cheesiness or leave you scratching your head wondering why those decisions were made. So, A Nightmare on Elm Street 2 is one of the most divisive entries in the entire series. Some dismiss it as being a misguided, rule-breaking sequel, while others celebrate it for being a bold, subversive cult classic, especially for the way it unintentionally leans into homosexual themes. I mean, it's literally regarded as being one of the gayest horror movies ever made. For me, it lands somewhere in between. Not as tight and terrifying as the first film, but definitely fascinating in its own strange way. I thoroughly enjoy a large majority of this movie, and if this was the last one that we ever got, some of the strange choices that were made wouldn't feel so strange. But because of the way everything else we got after this one goes back to the rules established in the original, this one just seems like its own weird standalone entry. In saying all that, I still watch this movie regularly, and it grows on me a little bit more each time. I'm gonna give this movie 4 out of 5. It's some pretty brutal and dark Freddy that we get here, and I think that deserves some praise. But hey, that's just me. What do you think about Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge? Do you see it as the black sheep of the franchise, or do you think it deserves some more love, or both, like me? Drop your thoughts down in the comments. I'd love to chat about this one. If you're new here, welcome. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. It would really help this brand new channel grow. I'd really appreciate it. Alright, I'm getting into spoiler territory here, so if you haven't seen the movie, go check it out. Come on back here for my deeper thoughts. But there's your warning. Okay, so there's inherently a lot to talk about whenever this movie is brought up, so this may end up being longer than I normally try to do, but here we go. Okay, so right away, I love the intro dream sequence into this film. It's our first introduction to our main character Jesse, and it's one of those things I didn't really realize until further watches, but it makes me think that he doesn't think too well of himself. Unless it's all Freddy's doing. We see him sitting in the back of the bus with bad, insecure posture, a haircut that moms gave their first grade children back in the 90s, a nerdy white button up, and a look on his face that just reeks of, I don't fit in. Even the girls remaining on the bus start teasing him. But we learn afterwards that he's not really like this. Anyways, it's fun to see Robert Englund without his makeup on real quick there, and this scene goes off the rails quick as soon as the bus driver decides to take the bus out for a little light off-roading. It's pretty funny seeing the exterior shots of the bus and how hard it's getting rocked. Then they show the girls inside and barely getting knocked around. We quickly see that it's Freddy driving the bus, and they eventually get stuck teeter-tottering on this cylindrical pole of Earth. I will say, there's an odd amount of time since they get stuck like this before the kids say anything or even look at the bus driver, or even before Freddy himself gets up and confronts them. Either way, really cool, amped up introduction to this sequel. As we get introduced to Jesse and his family, we quickly realize we're getting the typical sitcom setup here. The overly nice and protective mother, the just eating breakfast and reading the paper before going to work bossy dad, the prankster-minded younger sister, and our troubled teen, Jesse. I really didn't care for the mom in the first film, but we're not supposed to. They make her a distant, alcoholic mom for a reason. At least she's memorable though. This family, aside from Jesse of course, means nothing to me. They leave no impressions with me except for being glad that I don't have that guy as a dad.
What that boy needs is a good goddamn kick in the butt. That's what he needs.
This really comes to shine when we get to one of the dumbest scenes in the movie. And there's a few of them. Here we get to see a vicious, unstoppable, carnage-filled parakeet? Or whatever kind of bird that is. After this bird goes nuts and literally spontaneously combusts in the air, the dad blames Jesse, saying he must have used a cherry bomb. Really? How, Dad? Did you see a firecracker strapped to that bird? Everything about that scene is so ridiculous, especially the bird POV shots. We then meet our lead's love interest. I think? Lisa. I think she's a good character for what's needed in this film. Someone trying to help Jesse and keep him from losing his mind. But she's a little bland. And again, not very memorable to me. Then, once at school, we meet Grady. Pretty much the only other important character in this film. He and Jesse get into a bit of a fight while playing baseball. And I remember my initial thoughts going to, oh great. They're going to be some kind of high school rivals fighting for the girl or something like that. But they actually end up being friends, which was kind of a relief. The last character worth mentioning is Coach Snyder. What a strange character to write. On that note, let's address the elephant in the room. This is said to be one of the gayest horror films of all time. When I first heard that, I kind of just chuckled in disbelief, thinking people were looking too deep into things or looking for things that weren't there. Then I watched it again afterwards and yeah, I get it. From Coach Schneider's way of treating Jesse and Grady to him being found at a fetish bar, which I'm guessing he drove Jesse back to the high school afterwards to run laps. Pretty creepy. Drive him home, dude. That must have been an interesting car ride. Anyways, to Coach Schneider's death, where he, I'm again assuming, made Jesse shower, gets pelted by balls, tied up naked in the shower, whipped in the ass by towels, and eventually slashed. All the way to Jesse playing the typical role of the final girl. Jesse's also very frequently not wearing clothes or not much clothes, and he's always sweaty. There's the undeniable scene where Jesse leaves Lisa right when they're getting down to business. He freaks out, goes to Grady's house, waking him up. I mean, that's not subtext. The idea that this movie is more about Jesse's internal struggles with homosexual or bisexual thoughts manifesting in this possession starts to really feel less of a theory. Even the conclusion of the film, Jesse is essentially saved from a kiss from a girl. She kisses Freddy. Gross decision, by the way. Freddy is defeated and Jesse breaks out of its shell. To all of this, I just say, yep. It's unfortunate how things played behind the scenes and in the aftermath for actor Mark Patton, who is gay and who was at the time of filming closeted still. Between ridiculous things creators said back then, like, There's no gay subtext, Mark just played the part too gay. And people's feedback, and even Hollywood typecasting him as a gay character afterwards, all led to Mark Patton leaving his career of acting. It wasn't until 2010 that David Chaskin openly admitted that there were intentional gay themes written into this film. Alright, on to the second elephant in the room. This film essentially breaks all the rules created by Wes Craven in the original, and a lot of people, rightfully so, have a strong dislike for this movie because of that. Freddy is supposed to be haunting and killing in your dreams. It's what made the original so intense and scary, you're afraid to fall asleep. Here, Freddy is slowly possessing a victim until he can literally bust through his chest, xenomorph style, and kill people in the real world. By the way, that body horror chest bursting scene is, in my opinion, probably the coolest effect we get out of any of these films. It's unfortunate it exists in one aspect, but cool to watch nonetheless. Anyways, Freddy enters our reality and goes on a murder spree at this pool party, slashing and gashing his little heart out. It's a pretty terrifying thought, and I can see why the writers thought it would be a cool place to take things, but it also feels like a potential franchise killer. If it did kill the franchise, and this was the last Freddy we ever saw, I don't think it would have felt as obscure. Maybe Freddy learned some new tricks while being stuck in his dream reality, and this was his last effort of killing some kids. But since the future movies, luckily, go back to the rules of the first film, this one just sticks out as being odd. If there wasn't reference to Nancy with her diary or all the other callouts to the original film, this would feel like a fan film or a what if kind of entry, but it's not. So it's just a very strange story when looking at the franchise as a whole. So overall, yes, it's an oddball movie. There's a lot of strange decisions made in the writing, which may have been unfortunate to the people involved and the fans at the time, but have turned this into a cult classic for many people for those reasons. Rules were broken, it's not as creepy and eerie as the original, but it's still terrifying in its own way. I still really enjoy this film. I don't really watch it with the mentality of this is canon per se, but it's still a really fun watch. I mean, if we could have gotten this dark, ruthless, and menacing Freddy in all the films following this, I'd probably love all those films that much more. Probably my favorite Freddy, to be honest. It's just unfortunate that it's in this film. Alright, that's all I got. Oh wait, no it's not. Who the hell thought this was a good idea? Alright, that's all I got. I can keep rambling about this movie, but this is getting pretty long already. Again, if you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe, and please drop your comments on what you think about this movie down below. I'd really like to hear them. And remember, if your gym coach takes you anywhere but home from a fetish bar, time to call Chris Hansen. See you guys next time.